One of the great things about being back on the road with these two is that we can go and explore places. The problem is everything we're going to look at now is behind us, and the first rule of telly is don't look away from the camera. So, Chris, Siddy, what can they see, you see, that I can't?
Well, I've always felt we were in a bit of a pantomime with this, and so everything is behind us. Behind me on this side is the site of the former underground station building, now a hotel, and Siddy.
On this side we have the Mainline station building, which was the last in London to open around the turn of the 20th century.
Now the thing is, these all look great, apparently. I can't see them, you can, I can't. But we should be downstairs looking at all the great stuff in the tube station itself. Should we go?
Let's go.
Marvellous. Hi everyone, welcome to Series 3, Episode 15 of the Hidden London Hangouts. My name's Alex Grundon. Hello, we're going down and dirty into a tube station near you again today. It's a great episode, and later on we're going to meet a really inspirational new designer who's using the tube as a creation device for her final year dissertations. That's all to come. No Siddy today. She's not very well, so get well soon, darling, from all of us. But we do have the amazing Chris Nix from the London Transport Museum. Hi, Chris.
Hello, Alex. I see we've both gone for the same pattern shirts, but fortunately different colour. Nice to see you again.
Mountain up here, isn't it? It's a little bit broke back, but no such sign from Laura Hilton Brown, who's looking beautiful today.
Oh, thanks, Alex. I do think you two look a little bit matchy. It's quite nice. All alludes to your lovely little bromance that you have. Very sweet.
It's all bit, we didn't realise, we didn't do this on purpose. I promise we don't do this on purpose. It's all marvellous. Anyway, we are at today, Marylebone, Great Central, call it what you like. We need a history lesson first, and then we are going to show you some stuff that blew our mind when we saw it, and we think we'll do the same to you. So Chris, first of all, take us back to 1907, when this love story of a train station and a tube station began.
Okay, yeah, so 27th of March 1907, the Bakerloo line opens a station at Great Central, which is a mainline terminus, the last big mainline terminus to be built in London. And it took the name of that station, Great Central, not what we know it today as Marylebone. That name change came later. In 1917, 15th of April, the station changed its name. Interestingly, it did almost get called Lisson Grove as well, which is the kind of local area. So few names touted for it before we got the name that we know today. Now, it was built with lifts originally, with a kind of a low-rise single-storey building for the main entrance, just across the road from the main station. But in 1937, they started remodelling the station to have escalators instead of lifts. And rather unfortunately, the war got in the way, and the station was actually bombed in 1943, which upset the work. But they did open it later in 1943, having repaired it. Now, the station carried on having work done on it for quite a long time after the war before it was finally finished in the form that we know it today. 1963, the station was considered finished and as we would know it today. So there we go. That's a brief canter through the station, and we should probably have a look at some bits of it.
Too right, and we've got some great photographs to show you. Chris always manages to dig out some stars. And first of all, let's have a look at the mainline station, because it's a beautiful old postcard, actually, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, it really is. This is from 1905, and this is a photograph of the mainline station, a colourised shot as a postcard.
Gorgeous stuff. And the frontage of the station itself, when we talk about a low-rise station building, you were talking before about this. It's a bit like Kilburn Park, isn't it? Just one floor, and it was fairly plain, really, wasn't it, from the outside?
It is, yeah, it is rather. I'll show you that one in a second. It's probably worth just saying that, of course, Metropolitan line trains used to run out of what we're looking at here before they got taken over by British Rail lines much later on in the station's history. But yeah, you're absolutely right about the look of the station outside, and here it is.
Now, Laura, look at that. It's hardly an usual Leslie Green jobby, is it?
It's not. I really love the symmetry of this one, though, and the postcard, the image before as well. I mean, it's literally just, it's a dream of a picture, isn't it? There's something about a terminal station with that kind of grand kind of glass roof and the brickwork and the arches, and there's a lot of story in that. And then we've come to this one, and it's so like the image is so different, isn't it?
Yeah, so plain, so average, really. I mean, Chris, did it stay like that? I mean, there isn't even sort of loads of tar work on the outside. I can see bricks.
Yeah, it does look really very functional, that, doesn't it? This is from 1925. And so, you know, by the 20s, thoughts were already coming about for converting to escalators. Yeah, that is it. It had looked like that since it opened in 1907. There are a couple of things as well from stations that we've covered recently that you might just pick out and recognise here. If I just do a little zoom in there, do you see this? On the pillar there, just on the right and the left hand side of the entryway, you can see that skyline being picked out with underground. You see, just sort of up towards the top of the pillar.
Yeah.
You've got the St Paul's dome roughly in the centre of the skyline there. But we do actually have a slightly closer up image of it to look at from slightly later on. So this is from the early 30s. So you can see there, the answer is no, didn't change. They just changed some of the things hanging off it. So you can see those underground skylines have gone, but those lovely poster frames with the sort of swan neck lights above them on either side of the sort of flanking the doorway.
Isn't it weird though, Laura, how, you know, the Leslie Green frontage doesn't even look finished?
It doesn't, does it? It kind of looks like half done. There's a bit of tiling, a bit of brickwork, but I do love the swan neck lighting over the poster boards. I mean, that's just lush, isn't it?
It's gorgeous, but I mean, even the poster boards, Chris, it looks so temporary.
It does rather, doesn't it? And yet it's getting many of the standard kit of parts, corporate identity things being fitted to it, so you know exactly what it is. You know, it's got the bullseye roundels are there, the signage is the correct typeface, you've got the map on the left hand side there, and the poster frame. So it's, you know, you can still recognize it, even though it's perhaps not as fully finished as some of the ones that you used to seeing.
And we mentioned Leslie Green a minute ago, or I did, just chucking it as if everybody knows who he is. Chris, just give us a quick couple of sentences about Leslie Green.
Yeah, so Leslie Green was effectively the house architect, if you like, for those early Bakerloo and Piccadilly, you know, the Charing Cross Euston and Hampstead Railway stations, so part of the Northern Line. And there's around 50 of those stations were built under his architectural design. So they're instantly recognisable. Places like Covent Garden Station, Down Street, we've talked about before, with that delicious oxblood red tiling on the outside that here we see in black and white. But this is just a less fully finished one than we're used to seeing elsewhere.
Yeah. And thank you very much, Chris. Bless you. And the next picture is a ticket for a war shelter. But you mentioned earlier, Chris, that it had been bombed. It's a bit ironic.
Yeah. So the most underground stations were used by shelterers, and as the war went on, this was organised more and more. And you can see here, this is one of the shelter tickets that was issued to somebody staying at the station. Now, Marylebone Station is actually relatively deep for a station with escalators. It's actually pretty deep. So the platforms themselves would have been a pretty good place to be. They were, quite a way out of reach of bombs. It was the surface building that was damaged in the aerial attack. But yeah, you find these tickets in our collection for most of the stations on the underground, because they would have had bunks on the platform, medical bays down there, served refreshments from the refreshment special tube trains. So the underground was a surprisingly good place to take shelter.
Interesting. And when you have a look at the platforms now at Marylebone, keep your eyes open for those little marks where maybe tiles were drilled through and then the holes filled in. maybe where the bunks were but aren't anymore. You know, keep your eyes open for those little things. And when we talk about the war law, this is a very strange experience for people when they were sheltering, wasn't it? We touched on it in several episodes.
I know, and I think it's such a kind of huge part of the Underground network's kind of story and heritage and history, because so many people have got stories and experiences of sheltering underground. I mean, it's just something that none of us can comprehend and really kind of, you know, we can see the images and, you know, look at footage, but what would it have liked to have, you know, felt like to have been down there? And it's just amazing that so much of the network had lent itself to shelter and look after, you know, such a huge part of London's population.
Yeah, it's amazing. And if you are interested in learning any more about that, have a look at our episode about Clapham South, the deep level shelter, because it's so interesting. And the team's all dressed up and they tell you exactly what it was like to be in London during the war and using the underground as a place of solace and shelter. Also, Chris, the building at railway line level, if you like, had underwent quite a lot of change when it was remodeled. And there's a picture of that, isn't there, as well, in your collection?
There is, yeah. So I mentioned that it was kind of finally finished in 1963, but this is a shot of it in 1955 when they're partway through the process of building that entrance in the main station. So this, yeah, it's great, isn't it? There's no missing that. But what's also lovely is you can see the canopy for the mainline station above. We saw that rendered in the postcard that we saw right at the start. So you can see that this is absolutely in the main concourse for the mainline station rather than across the road in its original position.
Incredible. Laura's craning in. She's having a good old nose there.
It's like, I really like the top third of that picture. Like Chris just said then, the canopy and the way the light's sitting on it. And then the kind of brickwork and the basicness of the bottom bit, I'm like, not so good. It really
is, isn't it? Picture of two halves, isn't it? But
it's really functional, isn't it? And there's actually a couple of other things that I think are worth just picking in on, because I'm sure many people watching know exactly what they can see there, but there are a couple of things that I think deserve an anybody. If I just zoom in on the right hand side, you might see the numbers. This episode is brought to you by the numbers 4, 7, and 6.
Yeah.
So what are those things?
Well, they were ticket machines, weren't they?
Yeah, oh, yeah. And if you want to see that, they're automatic ticket machines, and if you want to see some of those, we have some in our collection at our museum depot at Acton Town. So we will shortly be reopening that, so you can actually go and see this for real.
Come and have a look at your illuminated ticket machines. Well, look, you know what? The great thing about this episode and the ones coming up, hopefully, is that we managed to get out and see stuff. And Marylebone Station, as Laura touched on, that it's in a very evocative station because there's quite a lot of old, there's quite a lot of fake old, and then there's quite a lot of doors that look like secret places, and indeed they are. And Chris, Siddy, and I, not Laura, you'll notice that Siddy and Laura are like weathercocks. You never see them together at the moment. They are good friends, but Laura couldn't make it when we went down to have a look around. And although we were papped, hilariously, if you saw on Instagram, we were papped by one of our viewers. But it's a great little series of videos we've got to show you today. And Chris pulled open the doors first, turned all the lights on, and then allowed Siddy and I to come and follow behind to see some of the really secret, disused bits of Marylebone Tube. It's quite low, isn't it? It's not good if you've got long hair. There's a very close lock down there. So here we are, just off the main drag. Big old door keeping the public out. And then this must be original tile work, isn't it?
It would be, yeah. You can see the little kind of chippage in it and kind of where the glass is broken a little bit. So this leads up to the old emergency spiral staircase.
Oh, excellent. Excellent.
And of course, we don't actually have any lifts here anymore. They're all escalators.
So this dates back from when the station was originally opened, and there was a spiral staircase and some lifts to get us up and down from ground level. I'm amazed that these places still exist. You would imagine if the station was changed in the way that a lot of them have been, that there might be something done to these places. I don't know, boarded up, painted over. But this is all absolutely original. And presumably the carriage staircase there, which is dark, goes down to the other platform. So there are 2 entry points to the spirals. Is that?
Yeah, which is kind
quite
of unusual,
isn't it?
You know, you normally have sort of 2 ways of going about it, but not in this way.
And if Laura was here, she would talk about the keystones, wouldn't she? She'd be talking about.
She'd be fighting me for it.
So go on, since Laura's not here, Chris, tell us about these chocolate buttons that are on the wall.
So you've got the backs of the tiles have got these depressions in them, which have got little lips on them, and when they get pushed into the wet cement, that forms a keystone, and so the tiles will normally crack and shatter. And if you just look at the top, they crack and shatter rather than split off. You just see where the tile has been left behind. You can even see the bit of clay where it's tried to cling on rather than let go. And that just means that when you're tiling up very high, they don't fall off. If you're going over the top of the barrel of the ceiling, they don't fall down. So it's a really secure way of attaching them.
And the other thing I was going to say before we move on, because I know we've done a whole episode on tiles, but it never ceases to amaze me how thick these tiles are. If you look at the actual thickness of them, they're huge.
And they're really good quality. I don't know if that's creating too much glare, but although they've crazed, they've got this vitreous surface that makes them really easy to clean. And if we can pick up the right angle, particularly on these green ones, but from a distance they look kind of like a black, grey, sludgy colour. But when you get in close, they're...
Wait, go back a little. Yeah, there you go.
You can just see there's an iridescence in there, all the colours of the rainbow, and a kind of almost goldy brown overlaid on this mottled green, and the usual very dark through to extremely light.
And one of the things you said was crazed. That's the cracking, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, it's basically where the vitreous surface has been strained and it just sort of crazes into that speckled pattern.
No, I love this. So this is just the landing area, but if you go through the gate, that's the spiral staircase, and there is a bit of me, Chris and Silly, that wants to go up there. Can we go up there?
Well, we've got the kids, so it would seem rude not to, really, wouldn't it?
Whoa, hold it right there, because we've got to get Laura up to speed. She wasn't there. It's our teeny tiny, teely-tiny, gorgeous girl. Laura, what do you think of all that you've seen so far?
Guys, I'm so jealous just from that little clip, and I know you did so much more than that, but I'm just right. So there's so much to go at. The tiles, what phenomenal condition they are in, right? Beautiful. So I know that the light plays a really big part in how, like, what kind of colour it appears to be, and we've talked about this and referred to it in previous episodes about the shade and the depth. And it was all going on in that green tile, wasn't it? I'm going to go with it's very similar to that. I think Chris used the word iridescent, but you know, a mallard duck has that beautiful plumage, the green and the blue.
Yeah.
I'm going with it. If it was a tiny bit more blue, perfect, spot on. But it just that's totally where it took me to, like a beautiful lake in the park with that amazing feather that the colour that the ducks have. Glad you agree that wasn't like completely random. And then circular keystones, not seen that. That's also very exciting because it's normally the little zigzaggy one.
Well, the knobbly ones that are like a donut.
Yeah.
Those ones, isn't there?
Yes.
But this was chocolate buttons.
The knobbly ones are a bit like the ones at Down Street. So yeah.
So there's all sorts of bits and bobs going on. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Law. There's so many of these things. Like what I was amazed by was when we were talking about doing Marylebone, I was curious because we know the history of the name changes and all that. So we know there's stuff's gone on and we can talk about it. But actually when you go in there and you see these literally full spiral staircases and landings and staircases, even with the grab poles, the wooden grab poles are still there. It's incredible in there.
But you're just like me. If you see a spiral staircase, I don't know what it does to me, but I think it makes me feel like a bit fairy tale, like you're going to a different world, like you're traveling, like there's a journey. And I don't know why, but I love the spiral staircase. So as soon as you clocked it, I clocked it. And then I'm very excited where it's just about to take you guys.
Well, let's do it. Let's go into that fairy tale world because Chris had the keys and he was happy to use them.
So we first came here back in 2018, I think, when we were doing some of the book stuff. And I think really the reason they kept this staircase here is because There's a vent shaft in the middle of it that just helps ventilate the station.
That big pipe there.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Oh, this is amazing. Look at this. Might just take a little step of my own here. This camera roll has seen some amazing things, I can tell you.
Yeah.
Chris Nixon City, thank you so much. So this is the original.
These are the
spiral
original
staircase.
stairs, yeah.
Are they
because
wooden?
No, they're cast.
They're cast.
Wow.
But
So it's why they don't tend to survive in that many places, because often the damp and the water leaking into the tunnels just
They'll
gradually
corrode.
corrodes them, especially if the soil is quite acidic. So it's rare to find them, isn't it, City? We don't see them very
A lot
often.
of our sites are normally we point out to people where they've been replaced by something more modern in the 80s or whatever.
And we did promise you more in this series of the Hidden London Hangout, so I hope that you're getting an idea of what these amazing spaces are actually like now. To think that they've really been untouched for all these years.
Yeah.
I mean, this was stopped being used as spiral staircases in the 30s.
A little bit later, it was around
Yeah.
1943, is when there was a bomb that landed on the station itself.
Yeah.
And kind of required it to be rebuilt. So
Amazing. How far up do we want to go, guys? Do we get?
All the way is the correct answer, surely.
That's an excellent thing. I've heard that somewhere before. Let's keep going.
let's go all the way up.
Let's do that. Nice lights, by the way.
Yeah.
They're not switched on. Oh, hello. What's up here? What's that brown on the walls, guys? I'll tell you, it's brown on this ground rail. I can tell you. What have they done? Painted over?
Yeah, that does look like paint.
How funny.
Yeah, weird.
I think it's where enough tiles have fallen off the wall, they've then made it good with some render, and then they've just brown painted. I tell you what it reminds me of is the do you remember the brown that we see over the glass tiles in City and South London?
Yep.
Railway stations,
Yeah,
like
that kind of
Euston and
sticky on bit,
Moorgate.
yeah.
Amazing. And again,
Yeah,
more of this
that's
crazy,
right.
this cracking, and then, so there's a little bit of a landing here, and then it goes up again, is it?
Yep.
Wow.
As you can see, it's not a shallow station, is it?
No.
If you're just joining us, this is the Hidden London Hangouts. We're looking at Marylebone Station today. Is it Marylebone? Is it Marylebone? Is it Marylebone? Who knows?
Marylebone is
that
the one I've heard.
Oh, right.
I know, Alex, that you always take your cue from whatever the person on the train says.
I'm a
And
nan.
I think it's like Marylebone.
Yeah, and my late nan as well. She was very, very good. I believe every word she said.
We've
Oh,
sort
what's
of
this?
reached the top here, and actually, as you can see, not much remains.
This would be your vent that you were talking about.
Exactly.
This large pipe.
Yeah.
So this would have been the original, if you like, where the station would have been.
Yeah. So we're in the basement level, so we're still not up at the surface for where the lift would have come out. So we're still basement level. We'd have to go up about one more flight of stairs. But all of that's of course been flattened since it got bombed in the Second World War.
There you go. If that's not enough to tickle your pickle about the tube, then nothing will be. Chris, Siddy, and me. Guess we should just head to another beautiful location in the station.
I think so, or just back down the stairs.
So there, we'll pause again there because there's still more to see. But Laura, you weren't there, and I know you wanted to be there. And spiral staircase we both love. What do you think?
Do you know what? It reminded me ever so slightly of the Aldwych spiral staircase, just with the tile work and the staircase. But what I love is your enthusiasm for these spaces as much as ours as well, because to a lot of people it's just a spiral staircase in an old abandoned or disused part of a station, but it's so much more than that, isn't it? And all those little bits of detail are just so gorgeous, and I'm really jealous I couldn't go. I'm so gutted I couldn't, but really glad that you guys got to go and get this amazing footage.
It was wonderful, and I never take it for granted. A year ago this was not my life. Now it is, and I know how many people would love to see these sorts of places. And interestingly, we can give more content to Marylebone because, to be honest, it will never be a public tour. So the Hidden London Hangout is the perfect place to find out about this station. Is that right, Chris?
It is. It's absolutely right. It's there's not quite enough there for there to be a satisfying tour. So it's nice to be able to, it's one that we can cover in a complete episode of Hidden London Hangouts and do a really nice, thorough job of what there is there. One of the things I liked earlier, Alex, you mentioned about the looking out for the bunk marks in the tiles for where Second World War shelter bunks were bolted to the tile walls. You can do it at Marylebone, but it's really, you got to be quite canny, because as this photo shows, it was partially retiled back in 1990, and that, as some people will remember, is about 4 years before London Transport created its policy in 1994 of kind of saving architectural features. So they kept the tiles that were in good enough condition, but I presume you can see the join in this photo of the old and the new. The top half of that photo is where they've replaced the tiles up towards the ceiling, but the bottom tiles you can see are chipped and crazed. But I don't know if you agree with me on this. I somehow think the older ones are nicer. Even in the cream tiles, there's a variation in the colour. There's definitely a variation in depth to those green tiles in the bottom row. And the other ones are a lot more flat, aren't they?
They're much more professionally finished. They're like the sort of ones you'd imagine in a big tile shop these days. But I mean, Laura and I love all this sort of stuff. And to look at this, I have to say, you might expect me to say this, but hats off to the Tube for actually bothering to save this stuff and making it a rule that if you can, you should save it. Because you're absolutely right, guys. If you look at the tiles at the top, nice and straightforward, very, very neat, very lovely. Then you've got one green row of new tiles, and then we get onto the old stuff, and you can see the odd jagged edges where they've chipped some of them away and where some of them have been kept. And for me, there is absolutely no comparison. Those bottom tiles are just exquisite. Would you not agree, Laura?
Do you know what? I couldn't agree more. As you were both saying it, I was thinking, I wonder if I can say I prefer the older ones rather than the new ones. And what an absolutely lovely and charming nod to the past that they've retained them. I mean, good on TfL. That's amazing.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. I mean, but I think the fact that they bother to try mimic it, I think is really cool as well. So well done. This is part of the reason why the history lives on, and part of the reason why the Hangouts are so great, because they can point out the bits where it's not just fake old, it's actually real old, and it's all still there. Now, we did get a chance to see one other bit of this station, which is totally locked off. And Chris took us round the corner from the top of the spiral stairs into this other worlds. I took the hold of the camera badly, and Chris and Siddy explained what you can see.
And so we're in the ventilation tower, just above the stairs now. That's a vast way up there to help the air rise out of the building. But we've also got this beauty here, which is attached to
a big old fan that is kind of extracting a lot of air out of the underground. So this is why it survived for all this time, because it's part of the vital ventilation mechanism of the station.
What I think is quite cool about this is in most stations, when you're going up a set of spiral stairs, you don't get to see this. It's kind of tucked away, it's behind shrouding and so on. But this is basically a standard way of building Leslie Green stations. The stairs wrap around the ventilation duct, and that was really the only ventilation that was built into these early Leslie Green stations.
So just to explain what you saw, Chris just needs to sort of draw you a bit of a mental diagram as to where we are and what we were looking at. So Chris, just clarify that in our minds for us, would you?
Yeah, so that big pipe that you saw kind of just turning towards the right over the top of the stairs, you probably saw in the earlier piece of footage that it's blocking the way through the top of the stairs. And that isn't how the station was built originally. That pipe would have originally gone up to the next level of the building, so you walked underneath it on the stairs. But because the station building's gone, the whole thing has been shrunk down. So that was just that pipe's been lowered down, and the fan is in the basement of the station rather than in the layer above. But
Amazing.
Still cool to see it.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And Laura, what did you make of Chris's big pipe?
I thought your camera work was stupendous.
I mean, there's a reason why I never did that professionally.
No, it was very good. No, I like visually there was a lot going on in that clip, which I really, really enjoyed, because the fabric, the raw fabric of these stations and these spaces is so lovely when it all of those kind of textures mix. So you've got the stairwell, the banisters, the brickwork, the tiles, the metal of the fan. And then, you know, you panned in nicely at the beginning like that, from what you could see above as well. So a lot in that little clip visually that really I did love, and great pipe.
Everyone loves a pipe, but you know, the thing is, it's what I love about this station is that so far we'd seen the art of the tube, the lovely tiles, the spirals, it all looked very, very delicious. But when you get up there to that last film where the ventilation stuff is, it's drama. It's not so much art, it's drama. And then you look down into the spiral staircase and you see the art again. To me, it's just brilliant. And to be given the opportunity to go and have a look at these places is so cool.
It oozes character, doesn't it, Alex? It's just seeping out of it in just abundance. It's lovely.
But the great thing is there's even more to come, because the bits that you can go to in this station, i.e. the platforms, are as rich in history again. And it's, again, part new tiles, old tiles. There's bunk marks. There's all sorts of bits and pieces. I mean, look at that. The original name from 1907.
It's just gorgeous that this survives. There are a number of stations where this happens. The original name survived long enough to meet that 1994 policy of retaining things like this. And so where they don't cause confusion, the policy is to unveil them. So where they survive, you will usually find them at one end of the platform so that most people won't see it and therefore wouldn't be confused by it. But for those in the know, you can still go and see that original 1907 tiling. And I think this is a really extreme example because it's got so many dings and knocks in it, but isn't it great that survives?
It's fantastic. And actually, if you go to Warren Street on the Northern Line, or you go to Edgware Road on the Bakerloo line, the original frieze, the lettered frieze, is actually framed. So you can see where all the new tiles have been put in to make it look nice and a bit like the old way it used to be. But then you can touch and see the very original tiles from when the station opened. This is so cool. And Laura, you can probably spot the green tiles on the left-hand side, the vertical line is new, but anything after that is old. That's how they've done it. It is so clever.
It's just divine, isn't it? What an amazing corner of just loveliness. I genuinely am moved a little bit by that shot. I really like it.
It's nice. And Patreon, so you're going to see another distraction in that shot when you see your Patreon episode, because we've got the same one with a joker. But Chris, we also filmed at the end of that platform, didn't we, in between the trains?
We did, with the joy of face masks.
Yes.
So here we are on the Northbound Platform at Marylebone, whatever you want to call it. And this platform has actually been retiled relatively recently. But this bit is original, isn't it, Chris?
It is, yeah. So you can see the join really. This is far too shiny. This is all chipped, big chunks out of it, so you can just point those out. And even the name has been over-painted. That original name has been painted in brown.
Yeah.
But Cindy, I know you were looking at the holes earlier, weren't you?
Yeah, so I was just wondering if these might have been remnants of shelter bunks from the Second World War. Of course, this station got, attacked. But yeah, it's so nice to see this because it only had this name for 10 years, and then it got changed to Marylebone. So it's lovely that they've retained it, and you can see it's still on the platform.
And I love the fact that these are pastiches of the originals, but I really love the fact, now this is, we talked about this in the previous episode, haven't we, where the way it is now is that you keep what's original where you can.
That's right, the policy is, if it doesn't cause confusion to reveal the original names and the original features, then we leave them and enjoy them, and that's rather nice. You've got the tunnel mouth there, you've got the old signal there in bronze and brass, so there's a lot of really nice things that survive here at Marylebone.
It's always nice to be back on the tube, even though we've got to wear these ridiculous masks, which are rather nice in the museum, by the way, I have to say, from the shop. But we have to wear them. But it is nice to be back. And Laura, there's loads of stuff in that little video there to tickle your pickle.
I thought you all looked lovely in your masks, and we were only saying yesterday when we did a site visit how comfy they are. Like, they genuinely are like lovely material. But there's so much lovely things there, aren't there? So Chris, you mentioned about the tunnel mouth. Is that original work too?
It is, yeah. So at that end of the platform, that survives as an original. So yeah, it's just, there's so many nice things at that end of the platform. It's worth a visit.
And I love the brass signal light box as well, that's still there. Obviously not in use anymore, and it's all taped up and safety stickered, but it is cool to see it still. I mean, it is wonderful. And one other thing to mention that we haven't got any pictures of it really, but we can tell you about it, is when you go into the station and you go down the escalators from the mainline platforms, and then you go round a bendy corridor, and then you get to a place where there's effectively a left or right option to get to the platforms. When you're in that left or right option, you are literally in the original lift shaft, aren't you, Chris?
You are, yeah. So it's one of those sites, a bit like Tottenham Court Road, where you do get to walk through the disused bit of the lift shaft because they've just repurposed it as part of the escalator chamber. So yeah, it's really nice when you know what you're looking at.
I love it. So sorry that Seds can't be part of the episode tonight, but she was here in spirit and indeed on the films. Laura, do you enjoy a bit of that? A little bit of touring around courtesy of us?
Oh, I loved a little bit of that. Thank you. Yeah, super sad that I couldn't make it, but thank you for going, and just showing me those amazing tiles was enough, but all the added extra stuff was a huge bonus. So yeah, good work.
Well, I tell you, I've got something else for you, Laura, because I know you're into your art, and what never ceases to amaze me is where the tube's tentacles spread. And I was down in Cornwall earlier this week to meet someone who's decided to take some of the very familiar things that we've come to know and love in our Hidden London Hangouts and turn them into something which might well get us some good grades at uni. Do you know, one of the amazing things about London's transport is you can go anywhere in the world and find people who are vaguely, obsessively interested in it. And I'm in Falmouth, at the Falmouth College in Cornwall, with Georgie Boggis, who is a third-year undergraduate who's doing textiles, and her final project is on, well, tube related really. Hello Georgie, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad.
Thanks so much for showing me your stuff as well. I saw this on Instagram and I absolutely loved it. And it was this particular design that I loved. And this is, you know, gold, blue and orange. Reminds me of the tiles at Leicester Square. Where did all this start from? Because you've got loads of designs that are tube inspired.
I was just, to be honest, scrolling through my phone, wondering what I was going to do for my project. Saw my tube map app and saw the colours and was like, yeah, this is great. And then had some further research into it, and obviously saw all of the relationship to Art Deco. So that was kind of where it all stemmed from. It gave me two pretty good project starts: Art Deco, tube, rich in history, both of them. So yeah.
And you've been using the tube for years. You used to take your granddad's camera out to take massive photographs of the tube when you were a kid. And for you, what is it about that feeling when you're on the tube? What entertains you? How do you feel when you're using the Underground?
Gosh, I suppose it's just the rush of it. Obviously, there's everyone has got a different story about going onto the tube, whether they're going to work, whether they're going to a museum, going to see a show or whatever. Everyone's there for a slightly different reason, which is always nice.
And the tube, obviously, as we know from the Hidden London Hangouts, is full of history and design detail. And you've got the roundel in these, you've got the tracks, you've got all sorts of things, the tunnels. What was it that made you do this with the tube and your designs? Because this is, to do textiles, and if we look at some of your other work, there's this one, right? Okay, this is a beautiful poster painted version, and then you made the same thing in fabric. You weaved this, didn't you?
Yes, this is done on a jacquard loom, so it means that I can get a more painterly and more detailed design going onto my woven fabrics rather than hand weaving.
I just love it. I honestly love it, and you've done it in all sorts of other colours as well. I mean, for the Hidden London Hangouts crew, look at this. I can imagine these as tea towels. I mean, look at the vivid colours of that one. It is absolutely stunning. What comes next for you when you've graduated and done all these really cool things with the tube and everything else I'm sure you've done? You've made some beautiful stuff. What comes next? Are you going to carry on weaving?
Yeah, definitely. I've got a loom that I bought in summer, so it's a craft that's dying out really, and it's just quite nice to keep it going.
I love it. I love it. If you ever make that into a fabric, I want a framed piece of it for my house. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Of course you can.
So from Kentish Town to Falmouth, it's back to the studio.
I love that. What a great girl. That's Georgie Boggis at GB Textiles on Instagram, at GB Textiles. And thanks, as always, to Tom for filming that from all the moquette, because frankly, it's better than my Blair Witch offerings that you saw earlier in this episode. Laura, what did you make of Georgie's bits?
Oh, I thought she was gorgeous, and I thought her work was gorgeous as well. What a very, very, very talented young lady. And what amazing pieces of artwork and textile as well. So bold and kind of unique as well. And I knew you'd like the blue one. If you made me pick which one, it would totally be that one. And I also love that she's going to carry on weaving and use her loom, because it is a dying trade. And how amazing that she picked, I mean, a girl after my own heart, Art Deco and tube design. I mean, it's a match made in heaven for me as well. So love that she's bought into that, and that's in her heart as well, and she's going to use that loom. I'd love to see more of her work, so definitely going to do an Insta follow. But thank you for coming on the show as well, Georgie.
Too right. At GB Textiles. Chris, what did you reckon?
I think it's wonderful. I mean, working with a real jacquard loom is an art form, and I mean, just take a look at these in close up in these images. I think in my time I've seen quite a lot of work, particularly in poster design, where students are submitting designs to competitions that we've run for illustration prizes at the museum. So I'm used to seeing people playing with the bullseye roundel a lot, and there's some really great stuff in here. Those nods back to classic 30s approaches to doing this. You could very readily imagine these sitting there in some of the unused designs in our collection that people haven't seen, that were designed for the tube. Particularly love that one on the right hand side. I think, is that all of our favourite, or is it the one on the next one?
The next one is the one that I love. It is the orange, blue, and gold, which is the second set of pictures. So if you look at there's two more to come. And I just love it. The one on the right, I think, is absolutely beautiful and is almost better as painted artwork than it might be as cloth. But she's done that freehand. How clever are these people?
It's a stunning bit of work, and I know when you first talked with us about these, Alex, I think you and I were both minded to think of some of the tile detail that exists at Leicester Square, for example, where you've got LT sort of worked into the design with that red and blue. So yeah, stunning. The one on the left-hand side, I tell you what, that's giving me a slight vibe about. Do you remember there was a maquette done for D78? It's got green in it as well, but it has that kind of triangular patterning within it. It's reminding me partly of that, and also some of the really lovely poster artwork done in gouache paints in the 30s. So that one on the left's a stunner as well.
Properly cool, lovely stuff. Thank you very much, Georgie. As I say, GB Textiles on Instagram. Give her a follow and cheer her along, because it's great that she's using the tube for inspiration. Notes, queries, and questions, as always. Your questions answered, your thoughts on what we do are always welcome, and we'll always try and reply. Robert Girling, this is a good one for you, Chris. Great to have the opportunity to chat to you guys via here. I've been trying to find out about little coloured lights that I remember in the underground stations when I was very young, being about the 50s. They were a bit like coloured lanterns, and for each tube line, so brown lights for Bakerloo, red for Central, blue for Piccadilly. They help navigate the tunnels, follow the lights, basically. I just wondered when they disappeared and if there are any in the museum. Maybe the idea even dated back to the period, like the tiles, to help people who couldn't read. Unfortunately, I can't find any pictures. I just remember it was when I was small, and it was my job to spot the light that I was needed to get to the correct platform. What are your thoughts?
Well, I always love an on-the-spot question. I don't know about the lights, but what that does remind me of was a very short-lived experiment where not lights, but coloured kind of metal cards were hung on tracks in the ceilings of passageways, and they were quite clever because if for example you were interchanging from the District line to the Piccadilly line, the card on one side was painted blue, so if you're going from the District to the Pit, you follow the blue ones, and then on the other side it was green, so if you're coming the other way, then the same card is kind of just follow the correct color to the line. I know those cards didn't last very long. I suspect they were an enormous dust trap that were very hard to clean. I'd have to look in more deeply to see whether that was ever done with light. Would have taken a lot of power, I would have thought, to spread those through.
Well, we also had loads and loads of love for our episode last week, our birthday episode, where you got probably to learn a bit more about us. Not necessarily so much the stations, more about us. David Smith says, thank you so much for a great first birthday episode. You're all very special to many people, although we haven't met. This doesn't matter, and I'm sure there are so many of us who could do that bit to the camera to say how great you guys are and how much fun you are. You've definitely brightened up many people's weekends. I'm glad that Sam recognises, this is the boss man, Mr. Grace. Sam recognises how much you've done for the London Transport Museum. So well deserved. If I ever run into him at the museum, I will tell him, go and enjoy your glass of wine and take care. Thank you so much for the feedback. There is so much of it. And Law, I mean, when you look at the comments and beneath the YouTube episodes down below, all right, all gathers there. Dina, after over 40 episodes and the awesome foursome have kept this up. Humble Life says, love you guys. Daniel Scott says, worth watching to see Sam Mullins channeling his inner young Mr. Grace. Are you being served? You've all done very well. Jim Darrell, wonderful second part to the birthday episode. James the Plonker says, love this. It was just lovely hearing the stories of the times whilst you're producing these videos. And I've said before how much they've helped me during lockdown. And you four are just a blessing to watch every week. You're all fabulous. Roy Cousins, happy first birthday to the Hidden London 4. Many thanks for helping us through lockdown. Kim Columbine, looking forward to so many more. Maybe more of Sam's Mr. Grace impersonations. He's gone down very well, hasn't he? You lazy git, by the way, I know your identity and we will be telling people who you are in a subsequent episode. Thank you so much for staying in touch with us. You and the gang have worried me for a while. I genuinely thought the four of you lovely, lovely people were going to call it a day, especially after the bloopers and best bits always seems to be at the end of the series. No. We just thought we'd share them with you. But you've made one underground geek. Very, very happy to know there's more coming along the way. There's so many more lovely comments. We really are very humbled by it, aren't we, Laura?
We are, and it's making me laugh because we could probably do a whole episode of just bloopers and best bits.
Yeah,
just the one, you think?
It was quite hard to narrow it down to just a couple each, wasn't it? So plenty more of that to come. It's not the end of the series yet.
I don't know what Alex McKenna means by this. Alex can't resist the occasional grubby giggle. We forgive you, though. Can't wait to get back to the museum. I haven't got a grubby giggle, have I?
I think it sounds like the listener's mind to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So many wonderful comments. Thank you so much. So City's back next week, we promise. Laura, thank you so much as always.
Thanks, team. I'm really glad that you went and did some little subterranean exploration for us there. Really, really lovely station. And I don't travel there a lot. And I'm just going to go check out that lovely tile work on the platform. I'm just going to go hang there for a bit if you want to come with me.
Do it. I'll definitely be there with you, darling. And Chris Nix, as always, for the keys, for your amazing ability to shoot and also to explain. You are a star.
Bless you. I've really enjoyed sharing this one because there's so much that is in plain sight if you know where to look for it. It's a lovely one to share with people because if you want to see in person a lot of what we talked about, you can just go and get a ticket to the station and go and see it for yourself. I'm glad we managed to keep it more Mr. Grace than Mrs. Slocum this week as well. So well done on that, Alex.
I'll always be Mrs. Slocum to you. Okay, so what you need to do is find us on Instagram. So it's Alex Grundon, Chris Nix, Hidden London Law and City Holloway, plus at LT Museum. Also on YouTube, you found us because you're watching us. So thank you so much as always. Plenty more episodes to come. But like, comment, and just subscribe down below so that you get the updates as soon as you get them. And also, we can answer your questions as well. We like doing that as well. Find us also on Patreon. Puts a few quid into the museum's coffers, and we give you some extra brilliant content for you, especially too. Back to a great place next week. In the meantime, have yourself a great day and stay safe.